Well, if the St. Louis region was eager to turn the page on 2014, we can't start 15 without dealing with some of last year's issues. Lawmakers in both Illinois and Missouri are back in session, and both sides of the river have work to do, from the financial woes of Illinois to the fallout from Ferguson. And there are lingering issues of education and school accreditation. So tonight, lawmakers and policy shapers, and some Rams news from just last week that caught the attention of more than just sports fans. So stay tuned.
And on Stay Tuned, you drive the discussion. We bring local experts, journalists, and civic leaders together to have tough conversations for a stronger St. Louis. Tweet us your insights on tonight's topic, and you've got a seat at the table. With a few national experts and a panel of community members, this is the show bringing more light and less heat to the issues that matter. So stay tuned. Two stadiums in two different towns in 1 week. First, Rams owner Stan Kroenke announced a plan to build an 80,000-seat stadium in Los Angeles, a sure signal for many that the billionaire plans to move the Rams to L.A. While not quite the bended knee it was on when St. Louis first got the Rams to commit, the city did offer a seemingly serious counter-proposal, a 64,000-seat stadium right on the river just north of the Arch. A roughly $900 million plan that city leaders and plan devisers say would not require any new taxes. About half of the cost would come from the team and the league, and the other half from a refinancing and extension of debt on the Dome. The details, they say, are forthcoming and sure to be debated.
This is not about the owner of the Rams. The Rams are our team, okay? This is St. Louis's team. You know, owners own the franchise, but the fan base and the popularity and the passion behind that team, it's owned by the fan base. This is our team.
But not everyone believes this is the best play for St. Louis. Beyond public investment, several buildings would have to be torn down for stadium parking.
The proposed stadium would annihilate a whole swath of historic, cultural, and economic resources, reduce the parking footprint of this facility to a point where these buildings are not in the footprint, where parking can be structured and these buildings and a new facility could coexist.
LA backers say the stadium there could be built by 2018. St. Louis says 2020 for its new stadium. The NFL says the Rams are in St. Louis at least through 2015.
This is a topic we'll be going deep on, football pun, in the near future, so stay tuned for a future show that'll really dive into all that's going on there with the stadium. Okay, transition now from financial decisions about a stadium potentially to financial woes in Illinois. Our friend Amanda Vinicky from Illinois Public Radio is here to break it all down for us. Amanda, the website 24/7 Wall Street, this is not a nothing website, they're cited in national publications all the time, ranked Illinois the worst run state in the nation. What's going on with our Illinois government?
Well, you definitely have some state leaders that would dispute that label. They say that they've accomplished a lot, particularly when it comes to Illinois' social agenda, and that brings economic good. Nonetheless, you certainly are looking at a state that has some big-time fiscal problems. So this pension issue, $100 billion in unfunded pension debt that doesn't have to be paid right away, but still, that's a whole lot of money. And also, Illinois at the start of the year had a rollback of the income tax increase of 2011. And so that has also created a budget hole already for this current year's budget as well as for next year's. Over the next couple of years, the House Speaker has said the deficit could be around $10 million.
All of which is kind of affecting the state's credit rating as well. Okay, so you have a new governor, Bruce Rauner, Republican. Can he get the job done? He ran as an outsider, has never held political office before. What chance does he have of turning the state around?
Well, so you have several issues there. As you noted, he's a rookie, and so he has so much to learn. I have been covering Illinois state government and politics for about a decade, and I know how much I still have to learn. So, but he says that he is a really good student. He's studying hard, and he has done a lot of outreach to legislators as well as other players. And he's not coming out of nowhere. I mean, this is a very wealthy man who's had connections in government and with leaders in the know for quite some time. As to if he can get done the promises that he's made, we're all still waiting to see. Believe me, with bated breath. He is projected to, he's set to give a budget speech on February 18th. And it appears, at least thus far, as if he's going to not give much detail about what he wants to do about the state's finances until then. He's met with Illinois' legislative leaders, but they say he's offered no specifics. We keep on asking, and on the campaign trail, Bruce Rauner made a lot of promises. He said, I'm going to bring back Illinois. We're going to get businesses coming here. I'm going to allow taxes to go down, reform the tax code overall, give more money to education. That's a whole lot of promises without any plan for how it's actually going to get done.
He's a Republican. The Democrats have a super majority, I believe, in the legislature. Are they willing to work with him? Can they work together?
It really is an interesting dynamic, because as you noted, it's this super majority of Democrats. In the Senate, it's basically 2-1. And yet, because there is now a Republican in the governor's office, it very much changes the culture of Springfield, the dynamic around here. Democrats have taken past budgets with just Democratic votes. That's not a popular or a good thing. Those have involved cuts or, as I said, a tax increase a couple of years back. They say not anymore. They're very much looking to work with Bruce Rauner. They say yes, of course, to make the state better, but also because they're looking to share the blame, share the pain.
Is he truly the outsider he said he is? Did he have any Chicago support, so to speak?
He is an outsider in the sense that he's new to state government and that he doesn't know all of the various acronyms and the appropriate way to do things, maybe all of the players. But he's no slouch. He had chaired a major tourism bureau in the city of Chicago. He's a good friend with Chicago Mayor Rahm Emanuel. There are photographs of them vacationing, and it was one of the dings at Rauner in the campaign where he was walking with a bottle of wine that was as much as some people pay for a home. And therefore, so no, he's not a complete outsider. And he has a whole lot of connections in the political world, political connections that helped propel his campaign. He, of course, got there largely on his own dime, $26 million of his own money to win the governor's race. And then afterward, at the very end, last day, New Year's Eve of 2014, he put in another $10 million of his own cash.
Well, if he can find Democrats who want to vacation with him, perhaps he can find some that want to work with him as well. Amanda Vinicky, Illinois Public Radio, thank you so much for your time. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you.
Okay, so if the problems in Illinois are money related, Jason Rosenbaum, Joe Manny, St. Louis Public Radio, what's the problem in Missouri? Or is that too negative of an approach? Is everything fine?
Right now they're trying to figure out exactly what they're going to do this session. Most sessions, when the Missouri legislators go in, they usually have already a goal announced, or there's like a tax cut or something. And this session is unusual in that there doesn't seem to be a defined agenda, other than they are revisiting the whole school transfer situation, the bill that was vetoed by the governor that would affect Normandy and Riverview.
School transfer, and there are a lot of issues from Ferguson. Is that surprising to you guys that there isn't more of a defined agenda going in with all that's been in the news?
Well, because most of the stuff that went on in Ferguson, the state can't solve, or at least this is what the legislators say.
That's interesting, because I've heard a lot of municipalities say a lot of these issues that come out of Ferguson, the municipalities can't solve. We need the state when it comes to the way they collect revenue or other things.
I think that there are select issues which state legislators are taking the lead on. One of the later guests that'll be on the show, Senator Eric Schmidt of Glendale, has put forth a bill that would restrict the amount of traffic fine revenue that a city can have in its budget. And that was kind of an issue that came to the forefront after the Ferguson protests. I know another one of your guests, Senator Maria Chappelle-Nadal, has put forth a multifaceted bill that deals with what police can do, for example, in a protest with tear gas, or many other things, which I'm sure she'll explain in full. And there's also been some talk about the structure of St. Louis County, about possibly eliminating some of the municipalities by fiat or making it easier to eliminate municipalities by fiat, another issue that kind of came to the forefront. But as Joe will probably mention, all these things are going to encounter some sort of opposition, even something like the municipal court changes, which seems to have a lot of legislative consensus. The Municipal League of Missouri doesn't approve of that, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of cities that are going to push back against that as well.
Most of those proposals will go nowhere. I'm not saying whether I like them or not. Yes.
Proposals.
I'm not saying whether I like them or not. I'm just saying the reality of the political environment in Jefferson City is such. Even the court proposal, which probably has the best chance of passing, the problem is that it would affect a lot of these rural communities as well, who also get a sizable chunk of their revenue from traffic fines, speeding tickets. And so rural legislators are already hearing about that, because Senator Schmidt's bill would limit it to 10% of their budget. Anything they collect beyond that would have to go to the state. Right now it's 30%. So, and you've got some critics like Senator Nadal who say, well, the court thing really has nothing to do with what was going on in Ferguson. It has nothing to do with the protests, that we're dealing with
many
police,
of the things that are in her bills.
Yeah, police and racial issues, and that really doesn't have anything to do with courts. So you're going to have back and forth on that, but the bottom line is you've got a lot of legislators who privately say nothing's going to happen, or if something does happen, it'll be minor.
You mentioned the climate in Jefferson City. It's the opposite of the makeup in Illinois, where you have a Democratic governor and Republican legislature.
I was just going to say, I think we're in a period of transition in Missouri politics. You have the governor, Democratic Governor Jay Nixon, who's term limited. You have an overwhelmingly Republican legislature, more Republican than it's ever been before. And he just went through a few months where he stepped into the national spotlight perhaps for the wrong reasons. And I don't think that his political power before Ferguson was particularly strong with the legislature. And I'm sure after Ferguson, even though I hear he's engaging more, it's not terribly strong right now. So I think in this transition period, where you're basically having people running for governor in the background, both Republican and Democratic, where somebody else is going to come and deal with the legislature after 2016. I'm sure there will be things that happen which are tangible and sizable. I never like to say that the legislature has done nothing or they're not going to accomplish anything, because I feel like that's very overgeneralizing. But until this transition period is over, after November 2016, I think we're just going to be kind of waiting to see what happens next.
Whatever his reasons for stepping in, he might not like the reviews of his performance in Ferguson. Did Ferguson, you think, hurt our lawmakers, our governing, their ability to govern, the governor's ability to govern at the state level?
Well, the problem is that Nixon, he's a lawyer, he's a smart guy, but he just didn't come across well on television. I know that sounds very superficial, but appearances matter, especially on a national stage. And other states were looking toward him because a lot of Democrats have been seeing him on the short list for a possible vice presidential nominee, perhaps, or maybe a cabinet position, and that's what he's been aiming for.
He had on his resume Democratic governor in what is now a red state.
Correct, and he's from the Midwest, and he's the right age. So both parties often need somebody from the Midwest to balance the ticket, because anymore the presidential candidate, except for Obama, often has been from the coast, one or the other. So they look to the Midwest to balance the ticket. And Nixon, because he's not too old and he was a Democrat in a red state, was on that short list. And his performance, fair or unfair, hurt him.
Not only is he not going to be a vice presidential candidate, I don't. If he was even talked about as a U.S. Senate candidate against Roy Blunt, I think he said that wasn't going to happen, even if he wanted to. I don't think it's happening.
All right, let's bring it back to what we might expect from our state house this year. Speaking of the governor, he's mentioned toll roads, or tolls rather, on I-70? Is that something, because we've heard a lot about how there's not enough money to take care of our roads.
I don't know, is the governor driven through Illinois? I think his opinion of toll roads might change, but go ahead, Joe.
Well, the reason he's been proposing toll roads is because the transportation proposal that was put on the ballot last year, just a few months ago, failed hugely. So voters didn't want to pay a higher sales tax to pay for transportation, and Missouri, everybody agrees that Interstate 70's got to be widened, improved. So there has been some speculation that his administration was going to see if they could institute some sort of toll roads without even getting legislative approval. Now, Speaker John Deal, who's a Republican from the St. Louis area, he's cool on toll roads, and he doesn't think the legislature will go along with it. But he's watching because he's been wondering if the governor might try to do some sort of, executive fiat thing.
It's just a major problem because I think that there are obvious needs with Missouri's transportation, but nobody has come up with a good way to pay for a lot of repairs. Obviously, the sales tax, which we talked about ad nauseum on Stay Tuned and many other shows, before August 9th.
I don't know if anyone actually got nauseous.
No, but I mean, nobody liked that. Nobody wants to raise the gas tax. Nobody wants to toll anything. Yet, I think that there are legitimate transportation needs, and this just seems to be a vexing problem with no obvious solution. So
definitely legitimate education needs. You started to mention that.
Yes,
will we see something there?
Now, the governor, in less than a week, will be giving a State of the State address, and traditionally that's also where he outlines his budget proposal. And the budget is the main thing the General Assembly does. Of the 5.5 months that the General Assembly is in operation, it's mainly the budget. And so last year he called for fully funding the school aid formula. That didn't happen, but there was a little extra money. He is expected to try to engage this time to try to come up with some sort of transfer proposal that he can support. If you recall, he vetoed the one the General Assembly gave him a few months ago because it had a provision for private schools getting money, and he said that isn't.
Even though a lot of people would say that's pretty watered down, and that no private school would ever actually get any money. Exactly.
The senator who is one of the key drivers of the new version said that, and it's interesting because that senator has served on a school board, public school board. So I think some are becoming aware of the fact, so they may have a provision that's so watered down. But even then, I think that the governor will be under a lot of pressure from public school teachers and other groups that are often traditionally close to Democrats not to even approve that, because the idea of being that if you get, even if it's watered down, if you get that started, that there's no end in sight.
And if that happens, the school transfer law is still in effect, although how DESE interprets it is kind of up for debate.
Okay, we'll pause the education discussion because as part of American Graduate, we're going to do a whole show on this next week. So we'll do more on that. Okay, thank you guys very much. Stick around. We want to hear you at the end of the show as well for your perspective. And we want to hear yours too. Hashtag Stay Tuned STL. Let's see what's going on online already. Well, we were talking about them like they weren't here, but it turns out they are. We have two of our lawmakers, two state senators here, Democrat Maria Chappelle-Nadal from University City and Republican Eric Schmitt from Glendale. We just had that graphic on the scene during the last conversation that showed a lot of red. Do the Republicans even need the Democrats at the state level?
Absolutely. I mean, I think oftentimes as Democrats, we balance things off. In many of our bills that we've had Democrats and Republicans work together, especially if we're from the same region. Senator Schmidt and I often look after St. Louis County, and we make sure that things don't go wrong.
Maybe I should ask you the question. Do you need the Democrats? Because you guys can do it as you, if you voted as a block, you can do what you want.
I think most of us, I know I do, take the approach that a good idea is a good idea no matter who it comes from. I think the education bill is a great example of how we've worked together in a bipartisan way to come up with some solutions that can give kids who are in unaccredited school districts a better chance at a good education. Last year, and Senator Chappelle-Nadal was a very key player in that, and it will be this year again. We work very closely on that, and that's how we're able to pass bills, you know, with 30 votes, which sends a very strong message as a bill comes out of the Senate over to the House or to the governor that we can, in fact, override a veto if he chooses to do so. So I think education is probably the best example we have in the last couple of years of how we try to work together.
Is that your top priority going in, education?
It's one of our priorities. I would say that we also have to look at policy that will positively impact Ferguson. But I do have to say in that, education is the foundation of everything. We missed an opportunity last year when the governor vetoed a bill that we had worked on as senators from the region and throughout the state for a year and a half. And it really set back a lot of things and opportunities for young people. As you know, Michael Brown attended the Normandy School District. They experience a large number of kids who don't complete their education in high school, and he did. And so to have kids who are looking towards the future and just to be in a district that's unaccredited, it's an unfortunate situation, and we're going to have to face some real troubling situations in the future. A great example of that is St. Louis City. We don't know where their accreditation is going to be, and they have 12,000 students. That is going to impact, especially if you are in the inner suburban areas, that's going to impact school districts like University City.
So are you, just real quick, not to go the whole time on education, but you're okay with a little public money going to a private school?
Actually, that was my proposal. The language that I put in is that public money could go to a non-religious institution. The way that I wrote that piece of legislation is that you had to go through several different tiers. So one, you could not transfer to a school unless you had an intra-district transfer opportunity first. And so that's what we wanted to do, is to limit the ability of students to leave so that we would not take away more money from the sending district. Normandy, as you know, if they had more students that left than did, they would be totally bankrupt. And that's what we were facing last year, and that's what we still can face. So right now, we've been in some negotiations. They've been very fruitful. This time around, we have the governor who is participating in these conversations, and I think he understands we're going to move forward with or without him.
Is the governor governing differently?
We'll see. I mean, he gives a State of the State on Wednesday. Last year, he did not engage very much at all. And I think that, you know, as we passed the first tax cut and the broad-based tax relief in 100 years, the governor vetoed that. We had to override him. But again, getting back to education, that was an issue that was completely ripe for his input, his leadership, and the legislature took that on, and we worked in a bipartisan way. But it certainly was not very involved last year. I hope that he is involved as we try to work together to solve some of the very serious challenges we have, not only as a region, but as a state.
Max Creek is a small town in Missouri that a lot of people know about that they might not otherwise because of the Max Creek law. How do you want to change that law?
Well, I think for far too long we've had too many municipalities too reliant on traffic tickets and fines to fund their government. And some of those issues have been brought to light more recently. I mean, just in St. Louis County, you have 14 municipalities where their single biggest source of income are traffic tickets and fines. St. Louis region has about 22% of the state. It's about 50% of the fines. We've got 81 municipal courts in St. Louis County. That's 61 more than any other circuit in the entire state, which in many of those circuits include multiple counties. So clearly, I think this is an issue that's ripe for reform. I think, you know, government by speed trap or taxation by citation is not the right way for us to move forward. And the injustice plays out for people who can least afford it. I mean, we are, with this system that we have intact, we are pushing the poorest further into poverty. We have modern day debtor prisons, and I think Republicans and Democrats can work together to try to fix that, because these are injustices that we actually have right here in front of us. So my bill would lower that percentage from 30% right now, which you can collect from traffic tickets and fines, to 10. If you're from the St. Louis area, you don't need to look any further than St. Anne. I grew up in North County. My grandmother still lives in St. Anne. When Northwest Plaza was Northwest Plaza, there wasn't a speed trap on 70. Northwest Plaza's gone, and now there's a speed trap on 70. And to put that into further context, just 6 years ago, there were 2,000 citations given in St. Anne. Now there's 9,000. The revenue from traffic tickets and fines was 500,000. Now it's 3.5 million. We have a problem, and I think we need to work together to fix it.
Of course, some people would say, don't speed, you won't get a ticket.
Yeah, but we're not, I agree, and I obviously want the law to be enforced, but we're not talking about hardened criminals here. We're talking about some people who maybe have a taillight out, life happens, they miss a court date, and then they're in jail until the next time the court meets. And that's wrong. We're not supposed to have a system. We also have, I think, some flaws within our municipal court system right now. 40% of them in the St. Louis region don't allow kids in the courtroom. So people who are trying to go to night court, who are maybe working a job or two, have to make a decision between paying a babysitter and paying the fine. We can do better than that.
Would that solve what we the unrest in Ferguson?
Absolutely not. In fact, those are two different, distinct issues. We are talking about inequality, and just going back on Max Creek, the legislature did a disservice when we passed that law. The way that revenue is defined is inaccurate. There are certain funds that are mandated by municipalities, such as domestic violence. Why would a municipality that is mandated to put money, part of their revenue, into domestic violence, not do that? So we have to recalculate what revenue is, because it is not accurately defined at the state level. That is a mistake that we made as a General Assembly. The next thing that I would note is that every municipality is different. I represent 41 municipalities in St. Louis County, and there are some municipalities that are obviously doing the wrong thing by over-ticketing, and it's not right. But there are other municipalities that are doing the right thing, and as I talk to my mayors on a quarterly basis, one of the issues that has come up is that there are repeat offenders, and they never understand the fact that you have to stop repeating the same error time and time again. And also, the thing that should be noted is that some of these municipalities that do have best practices give multiple opportunities and payment plans for individuals who cannot pay for some of the fines that they have received. Getting to the point of Michael Brown and the injury that has occurred in our community, in our region, in our state, and across the country, we are talking about a young man who was unarmed, who was the victim of institutional racism. He was walking. When we talk about municipal courts, we're talking about people who are driving. Two different things. We need to address inequality, racial inequality, bias, and educate police officers. But what's most important as well is that we have to educate our young people so they understand the democratic process. Many of our kids right now, they've been protesting, and I'm very proud of the peaceful protesters who have been out there to send the message out. They are not going to tolerate injustice any longer. But at the same time, they must understand what Senator Schmidt and I understand about the democratic process. We have two cultures, and Senator Schmidt and I are right in the middle of it, especially myself. I live in an urban area, but I also experience a different culture in the state Senate. And so our young people have to understand there is a certain process. This is a unique time. This is the first time I've ever seen in 15 years where you have a supermajority of Republicans who won't pass Medicaid expansion, but will listen and try to adopt policy that impacts in a positive way people living in North County who have experienced injustice. Senator Schmidt, as well as other senators, Republican for the most part, have come to my district to talk to my citizens. But I must say, there is a clear distinction with court reform, which I agree with, municipal court reform, with some changes in what revenue is, and the injury that was done on August 9th.
We could do a whole show, but she mentioned Medicaid. Any chance of Medicaid expansion in Missouri?
I doubt it.
Would you like to see it?
No, I wouldn't be in favor of expanding a program right now that doesn't serve the almost 900,000 Missourians that are currently enrolled in the program. You've got about...
What we're seeing here, not to interrupt,
Okay.
is are people who feel very strongly about a lot of things, but one of the things they were calling for is Medicaid expansion.
Yeah, right now with about our 900,000 enrollees, almost 1 in 6 Missourians who are on Medicaid right now, we see of our general revenue budget about $200 to $300 million just to maintain for that current population for the increased healthcare cost. If we were to expand to another 400,000, that number goes up by another $300 million a year. So we're talking about every year from our general revenue budget, just for the cost to increase, we're talking about $500 million every year in the increase. So we have to be honest about what we can afford. That doesn't preclude us from looking towards other kinds of reforms. Last year, we tried to work within the current Medicaid population to provide dental benefits, which can save money in the long run before people end up in more critical situations. So I think the General Assembly would be very open to talking about how we can reform a system that we believe is broken.
Of course, a lot of people believe there's a lot of money we're leaving on the table by not expanding it from the federal government. But we, as I said, not only could we do a show on that, I have a feeling we will because we have before.
It is the people's money, of course, and we just want our money back for good services.
We'll leave it there.
We'll agree on the stuff we can agree on, and then the other stuff we'll leave it for another day. Right?
Okay, fair enough. I like it. Thank you both, senators, for both of your time.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
We talked a little bit about Ferguson here. Another thing we want to talk about tonight is the Ferguson Commission. Let's get caught up on what's going on there.
In late October, when Governor Nixon formed the Ferguson Commission, for many it came with questions. What power does it actually hold? What impact can it actually have in the community? The commission has already held multiple meetings in St. Louis City and County, and another is scheduled for next week. The third meeting in mid-December was considerably calmer in tone than previous meetings, and commissioners broke into small groups to hear the voices of those in the audience. Late December, the commission picked a managing director, the first full-time member of the commission's staff. Some made much of her $140,000 salary, the same salary she was paid in her former position with the St. Louis Integrated Health Network. Last weekend, more than 150 people showed up for a Youth Speaks event. Commissioners met with young people, and much of the discussion centered on education. The commission says it will continue community meetings and issue a formal report with concrete policy suggestions to the governor before September 15th. Although the commission's recommendations are not binding, the governor says he will use the report to address issues including racial and ethnic relations, the municipal court system, and disparities in education and other areas in the community.
Okay, we're back. We have commission members here to talk about just exactly what is going on. I'll do some introductions quickly. Rasheen Aldridge Jr., Ferguson Commission member, Becky James Hatter, and Felicia Pulliam. I am so sorry. Pulliam. Okay. So, Felicia, I apologize. Felicia, I'll start with you. How, if at all, have the meetings changed in tone? Because I think we saw a lot of news coverage of very spirited Ferguson Commission meetings when they first got started. Have they changed, or do they even need to change, in your opinion?
They have changed, absolutely so. And it's important for people to know that the commission is here to serve the community. And when we learned what they anticipated from our work and how those meetings would run, then we were happy to change the structure to provide citizens the opportunity that they needed to bring voice to their concerns and issues, because we can't do this work without them. But I like to say that even with all of the spirited reporting, that all of the really dramatic activity that was shared, we got a lot of good work done during those first 3 meetings. And over the course of a 5-hour meeting, that was about 22 minutes of disruption. So even with all of that going on, significant work was accomplished.
So where are we headed? What are the goals? What's on the agenda as we start the new year?
I mean, we continue to tackle the issues that the community has access to address. If it's the racial profiling, community and policing, the municipal reforms, we're going to continue to listen to what the community wants. And to kind of go back to what Felicia was saying, those disruptions that did occur, it got a lot of attention, but it was needed, and it was healthy disruption. It was disruption of people wanting their voices to be heard. And this commission was like a safe space for that. It was a place where folks can come and share and express the same emotions and be able to get them out and vent them to people who are going to be working on these issues, so we can know the best way to go about the direction of what the community wants the commission to go, because they're telling us where to go. When we have these breakout sessions and we talk about different issues that they wanted us to talk about, they're leading all this. So whatever direction they want us to head in, we're listening to them, and we needed that disruption.
So you weren't frustrated or disheartened or anything of that nature if things weren't exactly
No, I mean,
polite?
you got to make, and what the young people have been doing, you got to make the comfortable people feel uncomfortable. We needed some of the people even on the commission that probably haven't been out at the protests or understood what was going on the ground clearly with the young people. I think when they brought that to some of the meetings, it was needed. It needed to happen so they can understand why the young people are upset. What do they want to change? What is it that they want to see happen? Because it's not just yelling that we want. We really want some systematic changes happen.
So what do you want to see from the legislature?
Yeah, so I'd just like to speak just for a second about what we were just talking about.
Yeah, sure.
You know, I think it was just so real and so honest.
Were you uncomfortable?
Not at all. It was, I trusted it. I kind of don't trust it when it's too quiet. And I think what I heard from that conversation, it didn't matter who approached the microphone. It didn't matter if you were a young protester. It didn't matter if you were a business owner that had just lost your business. Everyone was saying the exact same thing. They were saying, you don't know me, I don't know if you care about me, and you haven't called to check on me. And I thought if you really listen to not exactly how they were delivering the message, but the message, it really kind of anchored us in this real sense of people are in pain. People need to know that somebody knows about them and cares about them. And I think what Rasheen just said, it just kind of brought us to a point where we can sit there and listen. So it was hard to listen to because of the pain, but it was honest, it was real, and that was important for us.
I guess people probably feel like they hadn't been listened to long before there was a commission. So then they trust you to carry their message. Do you feel like you're going to be able to carry it to a place of power that can have some sort of impact on the things they're concerned about?
Well, I think we're very committed to it, and I think that is, our meetings are typically scheduled for about 3 hours. I don't think we've had one less than 5. They run somewhere between 5 and 7 hours. We're staying there till the last person is there, and I know that every one of us are doing an enormous amount of homework every night, reading the issues, trying to keep up with the research. And we have a report clearly that has to be written and delivered to the governor by the 15th, but we're trying to put a spotlight on issues right now and move them forward. So there is no disagreement among the commission of what our final assignment is, but there is no disagreement that where we can make a kind of lean in on it and move something forward, that is what we're going to do.
And there's been some conversation tonight about the push for municipal court reform. We believe that that is important. If you remove the incentives for municipalities to generate revenue, in the traffic stops and even in pedestrian stops. We're concerned with those as well, which led to the incident of August 9th and Michael Brown being killed. But if you remove that incentive and you provide a different opportunity for the community to engage with police and government, so we think that that's a very important issue. It will help police officers do the job that they're trained to do and that we need them to do. So when you've got policing as a function of revenue generation, then it removes the protect and service to the community that folks anticipate and need. So we think that that's important. And wherever we can find a way to make an improvement, then we're committed to doing that. And I think that that is an example that within a month of getting the research, understanding that issue, and when we're asking citizens to work within the law to be compliant, then we need our courts and government to do the same. They have to be accountable to that same standard at least. But we believe that there's a higher standard for service in that way. And so we'll push that because it's important that everyone do the best that they can.
You're from Ferguson, is that correct? From the Ferguson area?
I'm a North County girl. I grew up in Normandy, and I currently live in Ferguson, yes.
So is there enough Ferguson representation on the Ferguson Commission, or does that even matter? I've just heard that at a few meetings when people have said that there are not enough people who are actually from Ferguson.
Well, go ahead, Regina.
I was just going to say, and we didn't hear that a lot. I think what hurts us is that the name Ferguson Commission. Even though we are working on issues after the unrest of Michael Brown, we also want to work on issues that affect Michael Brown, but also affect the Michael Browns that are in the city, affect the Michael Browns that are in the south side of the city, the people that are being affected on an everyday basis. So the commission is named Ferguson, but it's not just working on Ferguson issues, because the issues that happen in Ferguson is the issues that young people like myself see on an everyday basis. It just happened to play out differently in the unrest of Michael Brown.
You're the youngest member on the commission. Are they listening to young people?
They are. I was definitely hesitant at the beginning of joining, not necessarily due to the commissioners, but due to other reasons. But
were you skeptical?
Definitely due to maybe the governor who had set it up, and I know the relationship between the young people and the governor. But the thing is, this is a very independent commission, and the people on this commission are independent. And the ones who are on this commission, the time that I had to spend with them, they really do want to see change. They really do care about the young people. They understand that we are the next generation, and we need to change these issues now, because if we don't, we can't have another Michael Brown. We can't have another young man or woman feel like that their life is not as equal as someone else. We have to create some action now, and it has to stop.
So Ferguson Commission, some people might look at it and think it's a little anti-police. Is that do you get that vibe at all?
I don't. I just, I mean, I think it's anti-bullying. I think it's anti-negative action from police. But everyone knows that we need a great police department. We need great police. And we've got to make some changes. And I think the Director Isom is on the commission, and he's leading up that task force.
Former St. Louis police chief.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And I think all of the police chiefs that we've been in some discussion with, they understand that some changes have to be made. And this idea of representative policing and community policing, we've got to find our way back to that. As Felicia said, the police have got a really tough job when it comes to crime, but we've got to figure out how we're working together on these issues, and it can't be the citizens against the police. So no, I don't think it's anti-police. I think it's maybe anti-police not being there for the community, or policing that is not really for the citizens. I think that's what it's anti.
And I serve on that subcommittee with Director Isom, and we have representation on that committee from the various places and spaces where policing policy, training, are where those decisions are made. And so they're working with us. This is a collaborative effort. We don't want to, what we want to do is bridge the gap and to figure out a way that police can return to this needed profession in an honorable way, where the community feels safe and served, and police officers are able to do the job that I believe they want to do. Police officers don't want to meet a revenue goal. It really isn't how they want to operate as police officers. They've told us that. So I don't think that we have a conflict with policing in that arena.
Rasheen may have been skeptical when he joined on. A lot of people kind of rolled their eyes and thought that, we've commissions, blue ribbons, all kinds of things. This is just the governor placating folks. But you're talking about the hours you're putting in. I'm curious about just your experience so far. Maybe the relationships that are forming on that commission, or just some of the what drives you to put that kind of time into this? Are you optimistic that this is that real results can come from the Ferguson Commission?
Absolutely. I have no doubt about it. The makeup of the commission makes me confident that everyone is committed to this work.
Racially, the makeup, the age range?
the understanding, the wisdom of the individuals that make up the body, their experience, their professional, the places where they are professionally, the work that they've done, their understanding and commitment to St. Louis as a region, the willingness. There's a lot of expertise around that table. A lot of expertise around that table. And it's a very diverse group. And I believe that a diverse group is the best problem-solving group. So we've got a broad range of perspectives around the table that help inform us. And we have great conversations and are building wonderful and trusted relationships with each other, understanding that we're all here to do this work on behalf of the community and meet the charge that we've been given.
We'll wrap in just a second, but before we do, we saw the co-chairs standing with the Attorney General talking about what we've talked about tonight with municipal court reform. Anything visible or anything concrete coming down the road here anytime soon from the Ferguson Commission? What's next for you guys?
Well, I think what's right on our plate right now is deep diving into some of these work groups. And so the policing that Felicia was talking about, certainly continuing to understand the municipal court. So we highlighted some of the concerns, but trying to unpack that whole thing and understand what it means, some of the conversation that was happening earlier. And then we've got to go into some of the issues around education and child well-being. So all of the kind of the subcommittees are now being set up. So that we can really do the deep dives. But I would just like to bridge for just a second. And so, yes, Rasheen is the youngest member on the commission, and it is a wonderful commissioner. But I think, you know, as older folks we're working for the Rasheens, that we can really look in the recent youth summit. Boy, if we could have had that taped, every comment, every person made, every kid, it was just astounding. And I took a lot of notes, and the most common thing I heard 14 to 20-year-olds say is, we want to be the change. And I was not prepared literally for the level of accountability that they were willing to take for where they were. So I think if you ask us, is it going to change? It is, because it has to. And the commission is here because of the young people that protested for 150 plus days. It wouldn't have been here without their protest.
Don't go anywhere. We're going to just check in on social media. When we come back, we'll add everyone back to the table. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
All right, we have the whole group back. It's a free-for-all. I feel like, Joe, maybe you should have sat down here, but that's okay. You're fine. It's too late to move now. Just don't let me forget you, because that is the island of silence down there. If anyone can handle it, it's huge.
Yes.
Island of silence.
Are you, Jason, don't make me sit you there. Are you as optimistic as what we just heard there at the end with the comments from the youth summit?
I have been very impressed in what I have seen. I will tell you that my focus is a legislative change. And in order to have real change, we have to have our young people participating in Jefferson City. It's good to talk about it, to get out the feelings, to have a vision for the future. I think articulating that is really important for the entire community. But we are in session for 5 months out of the year. And so continuing the conversation on the street or in a room and not in Jefferson City with 197 legislators is going to not benefit the movement. And so it's time to redirect the focus to the points that are important for change. And there, again, as I said earlier, we have a supermajority of Republicans who are interested in listening to young people and the changes that they want.
And I think that the issues at stake are much bigger than party affiliation. I mean, as having grown up in North County, I feel a connection, and I know a lot of people do. They want to do something. They want to improve the conditions. They don't want those lasting images to be the ones that the world remembers, but rather about how we move forward and some changes that we can make. As I spent time with my friend in Ferguson and talking with people and just trying to listen. And I think that as a native St. Louisan, there's a lot more of that going on now than has before. And we're having conversations that maybe we didn't have before. And that's a unique opportunity for us. So whether it's the solutions that are taking place, people talking about those in the community, or us in Jefferson City trying to correct some structural problems that have maybe led to some of the distrust, as we talked about the municipal court issue, as people interact with their government, and as people interact, and as a lawyer, somebody that cares very deeply about how people are treated in our court system, I think there's some real reforms that we can take on that'll make a difference.
Well, as soon as Michael Brown's death caused a wave of protest, I kind of figured there would be some public policy reaction to it, but I don't think the legislature, the city council, or the county council is going to be the final solution or the final people that bring some sort of consensus within the St. Louis area. I think it's just going to be people within the St. Louis region coming to grips with some of the systemic, deep-seated problems, and hopefully talking with their neighbors around the region, and talking with everybody else, and trying to deal with this internally. I mean, that was kind of what I felt, that a law can't necessarily erase decades of segregation and economic disparity, and I think it's still true to this day. So
I agree with him to a certain point. As I have been reflecting and dealing with many of my constituents who have been very open, some of which have been very open about the situation, there are others that are silent. Absolutely silent, where they've not been silent ever before. But there are some unequal pieces of our statute that we need to correct, such as deadly force. The way that deadly force is written right now in our laws is very broad. And so we can bring justice and equality with the way that we write some statutes. I also think that it would be beneficial for us to have an independent prosecuting attorney when there is a situation of an unarmed person who is killed by a police officer. That is going to bring more equality to a situation. I also think that we need to deal with grand juries. These grand juries are becoming a trial jury. There's a distinction between what a grand jury is authorized to do versus what a trial jury does. And in the situation that we had, the grand jury went above and beyond what they needed to do.
A lot of people would have liked to have seen that all play out in the public eye.
There's a lower threshold.
And I don't want to hog because other people want to chime in here, but real quickly, Jason makes a good point, though. At the end of the day, we are a community. And so I think it would be a miscalculation to think that somebody else is going to solve these issues for us. At the end, what it really boils down to, I think, is how we deal with one another. The conversations that we have, the friendships, the relationships that you forge. And even though you may not agree on everything, my wife and I don't agree on everything, but you find the things that you can agree on and you try to work to make those things happen. And that's an everyday kind of interaction thing.
Rasheen, do the protests need to continue? I've seen people say on Twitter, wait till it gets warm.
It's going to continue, and it needs.
The protests are not over.
They're not over. They're not going to go anywhere. I think for the last 150 something days, the young people have continued to take the street to make people feel uncomfortable, to raise the awareness again that a certain group of individuals are not treated as equal as other individuals, and that's not right. You shouldn't have to live in your community and not be treated just like a human being just to be treated equally. We understand in the movement, in the protests, that we need legislation. It happened in the Martin Luther King and the Civil Rights time. Legislation is necessary, and the young people want to make a move on legislation. But to kind of go back even to the Ferguson Youth Summit, the issue is that the young people don't know how. Constantly, young people continue to get up and say, we need help, we don't know where to go, we want this to happen in our community, but how do we do it? The movement wants to take a step and do legislation and stand on some of the issues, because we know that if Michael Brown was walking down the street, if we had a stronger deadly force statute, maybe that it wouldn't have been, the issue wouldn't have played out the way it did. But since we don't know about how to go and do it, we need to be educated as well. We need to educate ourselves. And the young people want to be educated, but we also need someone to come to us. It's not always that the young people must come to the people who know the knowledge, because we're nervous. We feel like that we may know how to do it, so we need people to come to us and give us the knowledge and the resources and say, this is the best way to go about it, or maybe this is how you do it, and mentor us and nurture us.
There are people who might consider themselves, or probably do consider themselves, sympathetic to a lot of what we're talking about and do not want to see another protest in the mall.
They may not want to see another protest in the mall. I understand that. But we have to give young people an opportunity to express themselves. During the 60s, no one wanted to see hippies out there doing what they were doing. But you had an opportunity to do that. You matured, you grew up, you were able to influence the community so that it would grow into the community that you would live in. And so we have to hear what they're saying, trust their voices, and respect them as valuable members of our community, because we have to create the space where they will live, lead, and thrive. It's important. Justice lives in the heart of the citizenry, and that's us. So I was inspired Saturday that you could have 150 14 to 24-year-olds come and spend their day with the commission, engaged in this work, diligently, committed all day. It was wonderful. They're ready.
I promised I wouldn't forget you. We have 20 seconds.
Okay, one word, vote. I think that regardless of what side you're on, I think one of the things that the young people need to understand is that the way to make change, I mean, one of the reasons the Ferguson Council was not representing the community, people didn't vote.
You said one word, that's it. We'll stay online, though. Stay tuned.9net.org. Okay, so we will figure out if we can talk over the credits next time or not. But we're back on the web now. So I'm sorry, I did cut you off.
No, that's okay.
Well, and the thing I was going to, now that we have a little more time, you said none of what they're talking about is going to happen at the beginning of the show. Are you any more confident that something might get done in the legislature?
No. Well, I mean, I think there may be some discussion, and that in itself will be good. But I think change sometimes takes time. And I'm just not sure if there's a majority of the 197 legislators who are engaged enough. Part of it's because the General Assembly is majority rural. And even though they have some of the same problems, some people see this as just St. Louis's problem.
So are we starting to break down? Okay, so the new division will be rural versus city, and
that's not new.
It's not
Jefferson
new.
City, that's not new.
Yeah, that's not new. 30 years ago, you had super majorities that were Democrat and Republican governor, and to some degree, you've always had sort of regional issues, and it plays itself out when we deal with education priorities or transportation issues or things that affect a lot of different areas of public policy. There is sometimes regional coalitions that form, but I disagree a little bit in the sense that this law is named after Max Creek, as you brought up, which is a small rural town. The issue has been brought further to light because of the recent events. But there's, and I intend to highlight this in the debate, Lake Tapawingo on the western side of the state gets 75% of its revenue. There's actually a town, Foley, Missouri, in a statistical anomaly that gets over 100% of its revenue from traffic tickets and fines. So I think once people are aware of how this is playing out, it's offensive. It's offensive because if you want to do certain things with municipal government, you ought to have the guts to go and ask people to pay for it, as opposed to sort of doing exactly, and I hate to keep bringing up St. Anne, and I'm glad my grandmother doesn't have the same last name as me, who still lives in St. Anne.
But my aunt from St. Anne doesn't have the same last name as me.
Right, but the truth is, as the decline in sales tax revenue, and this is not unique to St. Anne, those municipalities a lot of times have found new and innovative ways to replace that revenue, and that's the issue. And because it's just very quiet, and it's just sort of evolved over time, and we're at where we're at, where Calverton Park gets 2/3 of its revenue from traffic tickets and fines. And I think you said it, that interaction, if that is the most frequent interaction that people have, it doesn't create an ideal scenario for building relationships. And I've talked to, the police officers. They don't go to the police academy to write tickets all day long. That's not why they. That's not why they became. They believe in community policing. They'd have more of their time to spend in the community, building relationships, getting tips, helping people. So I think that there is a way forward. Not everybody might see it the way I see it, but I think that we're going to get something done.
But is it only going to be the revenue aspect? I was watching Twitter, and the Arch City Defenders basically said that it needs to be more than just that. It has to be potentially staffing public defenders in some of these courts, or maybe merging a lot of these courts, or maybe even getting rid of municipal courts altogether. There's no, I guess, right for a municipal court.
No, you're right about that. There are things within the municipal courts that need to be reformed. The truth of the matter, though, is, and I've had discussions in Jefferson City with people who are, that a lot of those are by way of Supreme Court rule. And you've seen now a new Supreme Court rule because of some of the circumstances about, ability to pay. The truth of the matter is that's been in state statute for decades. The fact that you take that into account. But I think people are wising up to the idea these are civil infractions, and that people are going to jail. People are losing their jobs. People are, then their housing is at stake. This is not the right way to go about doing this. So I do think, Jason, you're right. It doesn't just stop on the revenue side. There's some actual court issues. What's in the purview of the courts by way of rule, and what should the legislature do? I think many of us are willing to tackle some of those issues, but we need to make sure that we're.
And I want to balance that off really quickly. We are talking about the revenue of a municipality. We've already discussed that there is an error in our statute right now because revenue is not adequately defined. This summer we went through the courts. There was an initial stay of the Max Creek law. Right now it's in appeal in the Supreme Court. But let me remind everyone, we are also talking about economic development. And if cities have an issue raising revenue, then let's have a proposal so that we have more investment in North County. As I engage with my 41 mayors and chairmen in North County that I represent, they're talking about redevelopment. That has not been part of the conversation. If we're going to have an honest discourse about infringing the rights of people, let's also offer some jobs. Let's be real about it.
Yeah, we need greater economic opportunity, and that's, again, we get back to this education. People need to be able to feel like no matter what zip code they live in, okay, that they're going to be able to get a quality education and have an opportunity. That's how both of us got to where, everybody, the path, the truest path and the great equalizer is education, and we have to make sure that everybody in our community has access to that, and they don't right now.
No, they don't. So we've had decades of divestment in these, in North County and these inner ring municipalities. And it's played its way out in many ways that have been discussed here. The way that revenue is generated, people developing and carrying criminal records from a civil court. It's unconstitutional. You should not be able to do that. The schools are not adequately funded. They're not fairly funded or equitably funded based on how the revenue is generated and distributed. So when you talk about economic development, it is important that all of the legislators and leaders, elected and appointed officials, recognize the value of cooperating. St. Louis generates the majority of revenue for the entire state. It only makes sense that we use all of the assets that are available to maximize the revenue that we can generate there. And when you have that dense population and they're unemployed and uneducated, then we can't meet our regional goals. We've got goals. We're talking about innovation and entrepreneurialism. So entrepreneurs are bright people. They live in a different world and under a different structure. They can go anywhere. They don't want, we can attract them, but we can't retain them. And that has to do with the culture of the community. They view community in a different way. They view their employment and their profession is so merged with who they are personally that they are living and working in their value space. So it's important for us to recognize that. So if we can't retain them, then we can't meet our goals for innovation. We can't meet our goals for startups. We can't say that we want to have plant and biosciences and build on the foundation of the institutions that we have here, and we can't attract or educate our population to take the jobs that we say that we want.
Well, and I will tell you too,
that makes sense.
We have to also, because I think in this process of review, which is wholly appropriate. But we also have to recognize that we do, as a region, have a lot of things going for us. For a long time, I would say we were a big company town. My dad worked for Anheuser-Busch for 30 years, and uncle worked. But what's happened recently, and Popular Mechanics just ranked St. Louis as the #1 startup community. Some of them have them, St. Louis ranked as the startup community you've never heard of. You've got a situation now, Washington Avenue's been revitalized. You have Arch Grants that's been formed. You have a different entrepreneurial spirit in this region that didn't exist 10 years ago. So there are opportunities. We have great institutions, Washington University, St. Louis University, University of Missouri, St. Louis. We have a lot of things going for us. Cortex is a great example. So we need to highlight that, but we also have to have, as chair of the Economic Development Committee, a lot of the companies that I talk to, you need to have a qualified workforce in that community. That is one of the biggest things that companies will look at. So again, we get back to this education issue.
Even if you want to be cynical, there's something in it for all of us to take care of the things we're talking about here. All right, Becky, I've kept,
That's all right.
I don't mean to ignore you. We'll give you the last word because you had such a positive way to end the last segment.
Well, I think Jason really kind of pointed it out. It's two sides of the same coin. We certainly need all of the conversation that was just happening, but at the end of the day, it's going to be personal relationships, and that's what every citizen that is watching this right now can commit themselves to learning what the issues are and building these bridges one person at a time. And I think that is when we understand each other and we know each other, we'll fight for each other. And I think it's going to be, St. Louis needs to be the best place to live, the best relationships in America. That's who we need to be.